sarvam amriteshwari ma. Tumeva sarvam amriteshwari ma. Om Amriteshwari Nama. We'll begin with a short meditation. Kindly sit straight and make sure your vertebral column, your spinal column is erect. And slowly close your eyes. Try to focus your awareness on your breathing. And as you become more and more aware of every inhalation and exhalation, you relax as a result of that heightened awareness. Feel the relaxation completely. Now as we chant the mantra Om, kindly remember to feel the vibrations of Om from your navel area and visualize them rising upwards along your spine. Now kindly take a deep breath. Feel the reverberations of Om, relaxing your body, your mind, and each and every cell of your body. Once again, try to focus the awareness on your breathing. And now when you breathe in, chant the syllable Ma silently along with your in-breath. Hold your breath for a few seconds, not too long. And when you breathe out, chant Om. Ma. When you breathe in, hold your breath for a few seconds and breathe out chanting Om. So continue like this for some time. Ma. Hold your breath. Om. Ma. Om. Ma. Om. And continue for some time. Slowly and slowly, the reverberations of Ma and Om become more and more subtle. And just feel the vibrations of Ma and Om rather than the physical sound. Ma is a representation of divine love and Om of divine light. Feel your heart being filled with that divine love and light and expanding. And imagine your heart becoming as broad or as large as the beautiful sky of the universe. Feel the love, the light, the bliss. Imagine this light going out from your heart to all the beings in this world. Just like the rays of the sun, as the light falls on each and every being, they also become more loving, more peaceful, more compassionate, and more blissful. And while imagining so, we'll chant the Loka Samasta prayer 9 times. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Dhyayamo Dhulabagundhanavatim Tejomayim Naishtikim Snigdha Pangavilokinim Bhagavadim Mandasmidashri Mukhim Valsalyamritavarshinim Sumadhuram Sankirtanalapinim Shamangi Madhusekta Suktim Amritanandatmikam Ishwarim. Om Narayanam Patmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim cha Tatputram Parasharam cha Vyasam Shugam Gaudapadam Mahandam Govinda Yogindra Madhasya Shishyam Sri Shankaracharyam Adhasya Padmapadam cha Hastamalakam cha Shishyam tam Todagam Vartika Karyamanyan Asmat Gurun Santadamanadosmi. Om Manega Janma Samprapta Karma Bandha Vidahini Atma Jnana Pradhanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The previous session, we had seen how the demon Vrutra has been fighting with Lord Indra and coming out with such beautiful spiritual lessons that even Indra was ashamed to have killed Vrutra. And King Parikshit asks a question to Shuka, Lord Shuka. How did this Vrutra become a demon if he had so much of spiritual samskara, culture? So we were looking at the life of Chitraketu, which was his previous birth. And Chitraketu was a king who had many wives, but he did not have any children. So just to sum up, Rishi Angiras came and blessed him to have a child. And the child, when the child was given to him, Rishi Angiras also warned him, saying that, you will have both happiness and sorrow from the child. So when the child was born, the king started spending a lot of time with the child. And the queen, the senior-most queen, was also with the child. So he also was spending a lot of time with the queen. And this created jealousy, when the other queens poisoned the child and the child died. And then Angiras was Chitraketu was immersed in sorrow when the sages, both the great sages Angiras and Lord Narada, both who are the Manasaputras, or the one who is created by Lord Brahma, came there. And they were consoling Chitraketu and telling them. And finally, they called upon the soul of the child, and the child said, I had so many fathers and so many parents in my previous births and mothers. So which one are you talking about? And I don't want to. I just want to live, and I want to attain the supreme salvation, and I don't want to be in a body. So once they understood this, the soul went away, and then the king and his queens, who were now repentant of killing the child, did all the rites that was prescribed. And after the rites were prescribed, Narada, that is sage Narada, gave Chitraketu the mantra diksha, by which he was giving out the mantra for Chitraketu, and he asked Chitraketu to worship Lord Vishnu as the Sankarshana, that is one who attracts. And what happened was Chitraketu started meditating on the Sankarshana, which I'm not here, I'm just skipping all those things. And then Chitraketu had the vision of Lord Vishnu, and after that, what happened was now Lord Shuka said, O king of the Kurus, Lord Ananta was much pleased with Chitraketu, who had now become the head of the Vidyadharas, and said to him, O king, by the practice of meditation, communicated to you by Narada and Angiras, my vision thereby, you have become great in spiritual attainments. All the objects in the universe are myself. Within them, I am the witnessing self. I am also the cause of the origin, the Veda, the Shabda Brahman, and Prakriti, the Param Brahman, are my two eternal bodies. Know the Atman to be pervading the world as its experiencer, and the world to be spread in him as the object of experience. Both the world and the Atman are pervaded by me, and both are established in me. So it happens that a dreamer dreams that he is fast asleep, and in that sleep he dreams mountains, forest within himself. Shortly he wakes up, and in the waking dream he perceives himself lying in the corner of a room. So we saw all these things. So, and we saw all the advice that was given to Chitraketu by Lord Vishnu. And now, how did Chitraketu become Vritra was the question. So Chitraketu was a Vidyadhara, a subtle being, traveled through the sky in the direction in which Adishesha disappeared after making salutations in that direction. So after Lord Vishnu disappeared. Endowed with inexhaustible power of the body and the senses on accounts of his great yogic attainments, and extolled by hosts of munis, siddhas and charanas, Chitraketu, the great yogi, sported for several lakhs of years in the wish-yielding valleys of the Mount Mahameru, making his Vidyadhara women sing hymns in praise of Srihari. So, in one sense, Chitraketu had not yet reached the ultimate state of realization. That's one thing you have to understand here. And so he was traveling like that for, he says, several hundred thousands of years. He was traveling. And once in an aerial vehicle presented to him by Mahavishnu, he went to see Parameshwara, that is Lord Shiva, the master of the mountain, accompanied by a vast host of siddhas. And there, seeing Shiva sitting with his consort, Parvati, on his lap, and embracing her, Chitraketu laughed aloud and said as follows in the hearing of the Devi. Chitraketu said, "Hey, Sri Rudra, it is the most important among embodied beings and the teacher of the whole world. And yet he sits in the public assembly in the embraces of his wife, while he explains dharma to others, wearing matted locks, reputed for great austerities and the president of the assembly of learned theologians. He none the less sits with his wife on his lap shamelessly like a vulgar person. Even a vulgar person will hold a woman thus only in privacy. But this one, reputed for his great austerities, doing so in public." Sri Shuka said, "O king, Lord Rudra, whose mind was deep and unperturbable, only smiled unperturbed, that is what it says. Only smiled with at this a little, but remained silent. So the members of the assembly too sat silent, following the example of the Lord. So here, Chitraketu was coming to the abode of Lord Shiva, when he saw the most, that is Lord Shiva, with his wife sitting on his lap. So he makes fun of Lord Shiva, saying that how can you hold a woman in your lap, and that too you being the greatest of the greatest, and you're a great yogi, and you are such a renunciate and reputed for great austerities, and even a vulgar person will not hold a woman in his lap in the public. So what happened was, when Chitraketu said this, Chitraketu, ignorant of the Lord Shiva's greatness, uttered these highly unbecoming remarks. Sri Parvati, roused to anger, spoke thus to the impertinent Vidyadhara, who insolently prided himself upon his self-control. So this basically was his cause of making fun of Lord Shiva. Why did he make fun? Because he thought he had so much self-control, and look at Lord Shiva, a great yogi, great renunciate. And he is saying that that a great yogi cannot even control this. But whereas I, the great, have control over this. So Sri Parvati said, "Is this man the accredited authority to criticize, restrain, and punish shameless and wicked beings like ourselves? He speaks as if he were. Is Brahma, the lotus-born, a stranger to dharma? Are Bhrigu, Narada, and the other offspring of Brahma ignorant of it? Do not the Kumaras, the Kapila, and Manu understand its principles? Are they not honoring Hara, the so-called transgressor of dharma? Who then is this small fry to do so? This degenerate fellow of a Kshatriya who dares to override the views of all great men and criticize Rudra in this way. Rudra, whose feet are fit to be contemplated upon by Brahma and others, who is the teacher of the whole world and who is the holiest amongst holy beings. That impudent man deserves punishment. A man so conceited and arrogant does not deserve to go anywhere near the Lord of Vaikunta, who is served only by persons of great holiness, devoid of this kind of egotism. So, arrogant one, you wanton child, may you have an evil embodiment as an asura, in order that you may not do this kind of offense to great men." So, here, what happens is Sri Parvati Devi is cursing Chitraketu for his arrogance and for his pride. And naturally one may ask this question: wasn't Lord Shiva doing the wrong thing? Holding Parvati on his lap, isn't that a great mistake? So everything in this world depends on our attitude and how we see them. One thing that Amma has and all the other great beings have said repeatedly and again is everything is the supreme consciousness. There is nothing in this world other than supreme consciousness. But why don't we see that? Because we are not mature enough to see that. And the other thing what we have to understand is also a great yogi, a great personage like Lord Shiva, even though he is of that supreme height, if he holds Parvati Devi on his lap, Chitraketu has to understand the fact that it's not out of a sexual desire or any other desires that he is holding her on his lap. And they are beyond all desires. They have transcended the difference between the sexes, all the genders, and they don't see a woman as a woman, a man as a man, an animal as an animal, or an object as an object. They see everything as the Supreme Consciousness only. So, when such a person sits, you can feel that presence. For example, when Amma embraces all the people, do you feel anything bad about it? Why? Because her intentions are so pure, number one. And secondly, that when she embraces, she's not looking at that person. She's only seeing that Supreme Consciousness, the divinity in each and every person. And that's why, you can say that Amma can hug a rich man, a poor man, a handsome man, an ugly person, a person who has been completely deformed by leprosy, in the same manner that she hugs a handsome man or a beautiful woman. So Amma does not distinguish because of how they look from that bodily point of level. Amma is always in that state of the Supreme, the Turiya state. That is the highest state where she sees everything as the consciousness, even though she is interacting with us. And that's why, because of that kind of a purity, and that purity is what is making us go near Amma and enjoy that peacefulness. And when Amma hugs everybody, what happens is that transformation occurs both in our hearts as well as in our minds. So we can see many of us, sometimes we start crying. Many people cry. Many people just before they go up to Amma, they would have a lot of questions in their mind or desires in their mind. And they wanted to tell Amma all these things. But the moment you go to Amma's lap and Amma puts you on the lap, your mind stops completely. And those things that which you intended to tell her, nothing comes out. And maybe one or two things may come out at times. But what happens is our mind becomes so still that we cannot talk. We cannot say anything to her. That we forget in the remembrance of the divine. We forget everything else in the remembrance of the Supreme. And just having that experience, a tiny, tiny, minuscule experience of that supreme happiness which Amma enjoys is being transmitted to us by Amma. And because of that, we forget everything else. We forget our family, we forget the world, we forget where we are. Many a times, as you know, when people are finished their darshan, you have to lift them up. I mean, why do you talk about darshan? I remember one time, this was in Toronto, Canada, where Amma was giving, she was singing bhajans. And she was singing bhajans, and so what happened was unfortunately the hotel was occupied by also a wedding party. So it was partitioned, the hall was partitioned, and we had to sit on one side where Amma was giving the bhajans, and the other side there was the wedding going on. And during the wedding, there's loud music and people were drinking and alcohol and all these things and having a good time. Whereas the devotees were also having another type of good time in Amma's presence while Amma was singing bhajans. And it was the exact moment when both the parties, I will say, because this huge Amma's party and the wedding party finished, they were coming out. The wedding party attendants were coming out, and several of them were quite drunk. And when they saw the devotees, what did they see? They saw they were also drunk. Because the devotees were in complete bliss. They did not understand what was going in there. So they thought that these devotees who were coming out were in a big party getting drunk, whereas the devotees were drunk from the bliss that they had from Amma. It was such a beautiful scene. I should have just filmed it. And they were looking, the wedding party was looking at them with a knowing smile. Oh, you were also drinking, okay. And so you got drunk. And so that was their attitude. So you can just see that from the level from which they come, you always judge the next person, the person whom you see, or the object you see, or the experience that you have is judged by the mind according to your maturity. So an ordinary person will only see Lord Shiva with Parvati seated on his lap. Whereas there is no difference. A person of the highest spiritual order will see that there is no difference between Parvati and Shiva. And they will see only one. There's no duality there. They will see only the unity. And this difference between Lord Shiva and Parvati is because of the duality in our mind. Whereas for a great person like Amma, there is absolutely no duality. And this is what happened to Chitraketu. And not only that, because of his pride, and he was, as I said, he was not also fully realized, and his ego was there. So Goddess Parvati said, cursed him. In one sense, it's not a curse. Actually, it's a blessing. Whenever the great saints curse, it is not a curse at all. It's always a blessing. Why? Because it is to make us understand, go through those experiences and make us more mature so that we can get closer to the Lord, the realization. So here, that's what happened. So Goddess Parvati cursed him, saying that you have to take the body of an asura so that you will not offend great men in future. So why? Because then he will understand. Going through these experiences, he will become more spiritually mature. So when cursed thus, Chitraketu descended from his aerial vehicle and humbly making prostrations to Sri Parvati tried to pacify her. O goddess, I accept your curse with both arms. Whatever divinities bestow on one, whether it be favorable or unfavorable, is all the result of one's karma. The jiva, overpowered by ignorance and moving about in this cycle of transmigratory existence, enjoys pleasurable and painful experiences wherever he be born. Neither oneself nor others are responsible for one's happiness and misery. The ignorant man alone thinks that himself and others are the cause. In this perpetual movement of Prakriti, what is a place for a curse or a blessing or pain or pleasure of heaven or hell? They are all ephemeral. The impartible one, the Lord of all, creates everything with the power of his Maya and bestows on them joy and sorrow, liberation and bondage. No one is especially dear to him or inimical, none specially related or friendly, none his own or alien. For him, who is always unaffected and alike to all, there is no incentive for pleasure, much less for anger. Yet his Maya, in the form of karma, makes for pleasure and pain, bondage and liberation, birth and death. In fact, for the entire involvement of the jiva in the cycle of transmigratory existence. So, Chitraketu, because of his spiritual maturity, he accepts the curse. Why? Because he knows what is the reason of the curse and what will happen because of the curse and why he's being cursed also. So he accepts it. And that itself is a sign of maturity, accepting the curse. And he says, even though you have cursed me, so whatever divinities that the great people bestow on one, so whether it be favorable or unfavorable, it's all the result of one's karma. So it is your karma coming back to you. So don't think that somebody has cursed you, and because of that curse or some black magic or white magic or whatever it is, this you are suffering. It's all because of your karma only that is coming. All the favorable and unfavorable situations are coming because of the karma. So, but what happens? But the jiva, overpowered by ignorance and moving in this cycle of transmigratory existence, enjoys pleasurable and painful experiences wherever he may be born. So whether you are, as long as you are born in a body, whether you are a great person or nothing, you have to go through these experiences. And neither oneself nor others are responsible for one's happiness and misery. So the ignorant alone thinks that himself and others are the cause. So you always blame it on somebody else. That that such and such person is the cause of my misery and that person has caused it. No. So understand, either it is yourself or your karma. And in this perpetual movement of Prakriti, what is the place of a curse or a blessing or a pain or pleasure or heaven or hell? They are all ephemeral. So you're talking about this curse. It's also ephemeral. It won't last. It will go away. And so he says, so the impartible one, that is the Lord, creates everything with the power of his Maya and bestows joy, sorrow, liberation and bondage. And you have to understand, for the Lord, there is nobody dear to him, nor an enemy. And for him, everybody is alike. So there is no incentive to give anybody more pleasure or more anger. So it is his Maya in the form of karma makes pleasure and pain, bondage and liberation. So this is which makes the jiva go through the cycle of transmigratory existence. So just when we talk about this, it is the karma which is coming back. As we know, even as I was saying, even when the great beings incarnate, they also set an example for karma. And whatever karma they had done in their previous births, they also undergo that. And they also are being cursed. So in the Mahabharata, also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you can see that Lord Krishna, and when Lord Krishna goes to see Gandhari, the mother of the Kauravas, and all her children die. All 100 of them die. So she's so angry and filled with sorrow. And she is blaming, as Chitraketu says here, she's blaming somebody else. And she thinks that it is Lord Krishna who is the cause of all these things. If Lord Krishna had wanted, Lord Krishna would have stopped the war. Or he could have saved her children. And in his anger, she cannot understand. So she curses Lord Krishna and says, you will also die. With nobody around you. And you will die with, and all your race will perish. And Lord Krishna accepts it with a smile and says to Queen Gandhari, thank you, mother, for having pronounced that curse, because that's what is going to happen. All you said was just predicting what was going to happen. And why? Because you remember when he came as Lord Rama, he took the incarnation as Lord Rama, he killed the monkey king Bali for Sugriva. So he hid behind the tree and asked Sugriva to fight with Bali, because Bali was an evil king, definitely. So as what happened, as Sugriva and Bali was fighting, he hid behind the tree and shot an arrow at Bali and killed Bali. So what happened was, in that birth, he had killed Bali. And so in this birth, as Krishna, what happened? Bali has to come and kill Lord Krishna, take his life. So he has to undergo that karma, which he has already determined, which was already predetermined. So just like Gandhari's curse, all his race was completely wiped off. The whole Yadava race was wiped off. And not only that, what happened as he was sitting there, this hunter who was Bali in his previous birth came there, and Lord Krishna was sitting on the branch of a tree and he was shaking his legs. And the hunter thought that was the ear of a deer. So he shot an arrow and hit Lord Krishna's feet. And that's how when the hunter came to realize, he came running to Lord Krishna and asked for forgiveness and all these things. But Lord Krishna smiled and said, it's time for me to go. And you didn't do anything. And it's, you just, you were just a nimitta, that is, you were just only a cause for me to go. So what happened was, he's saying that this is what Chitraketu is also saying. When you pronounce a curse, or somebody says something about you, or somebody says bad about you, or something is going, it's your own karma that is coming in the form of that curse, or in the form of black magic, or something like that. So you have to understand that it is karma that is manifesting at the right time. And so what happens is, and that too, you have to understand that it is not bad. Whatever is happening is not bad. It is to take away that karma and bring you more closer to the Supreme. So understanding this, Chitraketu says, therefore, he's saying to Lord Goddess Parvati, therefore, O angry one, I desire to pacify you. But it is not for release from the curse you have pronounced. O great lady, it is for asking pardon of you if what I said was improper. So he's saying, I don't want you to take your curse back, and all I'm doing is because if I have said something improper, please forgive me. So Sri Shuka said, the subduer of foes, that is enemies, thus pacifying Parvati and Parameshwara, Chitraketu went away in his aerial car as all watched in wonder. Then the worshipful Rudra said as follows to Sri Parvati in the hearing of the Devas, Rishis, Asuras, Siddhas and attendants. So here we have to understand one more thing. Parvati Devi was also the first disciple of Lord Shiva. So when Lord Shiva looks at Parvati Devi, it is not as his wife, it's also as his disciple. So Lord Rudra is now giving spiritual teachings to Parvati Devi. And he says, Lord Shiva said, "O handsome one, do you now see the greatness of even the servant of servants of Sri Hari of wonderful deeds? Of those men who are great in their devotion and in the absolute desireless state of the mind." So do you see that? How he reacted to your curse. Why? It was because of his devotion for the Lord, Supreme Lord. Whether it be in the enjoyments of heaven, the freedom of liberation, or the sufferings of the purgatory, these great devotees of Mahavishnu see him and him alone and are free from every kind of fear. So they don't fear anything. Why? Whether they be in the hell or whether they are liberated, whether they are enjoying in the heaven, these devotees are free of fear. And it is due to the sportive action of the Lord's power that the jivas get bodies and all the contrary experiences of life, like birth and death, happiness and misery, curse and blessings. So he's saying it is nothing but the Lord's power. And the distinction of the objects as good and bad, desirable and undesirable, is a kind of valuation made in our minds on the basis of our ignorance. It is like mistaking a flower wreath for a snake. So why are you making all these differences? So he's saying it's mistaking like the flower wreath for a snake. So suppose it's like a very dark place and you cannot see properly. And when you see a wreath lying, and suddenly what happens? You think it's a snake and you start jumping. And so you're mistaking the flower wreath for the snake. So you're imposing your fear of the snake on the flower wreath. So that because of that, what happens? The mind is making a valuation on the basis of the ignorance. But the moment, so what happens? So when you see the flower wreath, you don't want to touch it, right? You don't want to go near it because you think it's a snake. And what if it bites you? So you're being away, but you take a flashlight and shine the light upon it. Then what happens? You start laughing and say, it was a flower wreath. And why did I think it was a snake? So that is what he's saying. So for those who have supreme devotion to the worshipful Vasudeva and they are therefore endowed with the power of knowledge and renunciation, there is no need to depend upon anything in this world. The Lord is the support in all conditions. So when he was cursed, when Chitraketu was cursed, what did he say? He said, that's also perishable. That won't last. The curse won't last. So he says, all of us, including myself, that is meaning Lord Shiva, Brahma, Sanat Kumara, Narada, and the other offspring of Brahma, Indra, and other devas are but parts of a part of Mahavishnu, the divine self. But being actuated by the feeling that we are by ourselves sovereign powers, we are not aware of his all-embracing will that is being worked out through us. So if you look at all the deities, what is that? So here is a very important teaching. When we look at the different deities in the Sanatana Dharma, as I said, there are 330 million gods and goddesses. So what happens? He's saying the principle behind that. Who is behind that power? There is only a single power. Who is that? Mahavishnu, or the Supreme Lord. Or you can call it any name, Brahman, or you call it Shiva or Brahma. But he's saying that all these are nothing but the parts of a part of that Supreme Lord. But what happens? We are actuated by the feeling that we are by ourselves sovereign powers. So when we do something, this is what happens. We always say, oh, it was the great I. We don't actually attribute that to our Guru or to the Lord. And why am I doing it? Because of my prowess and my power. But he says it is nothing but the will of the Supreme Lord. So much less are we aware of his presence everywhere. So we don't understand his presence everywhere. And for him there is none who is specially dear, an enemy or a stranger, being the self in all beings. Hari is dear to all alike. So don't think that God likes somebody more than others. We hear this all the time. Amma loves this person so much. That's why Amma gives so much of time to that person while they go up for darshan. Whereas Amma doesn't even look at me. She doesn't smile at me. All she does is just embrace and let me go. So you have to understand, Amma does not like anybody or hates anybody more than somebody else. To her, everybody is equal as she is or her children is. So this great man, Chitraketu, is a devotee who loves the Lord intensely. He is even sighted everywhere, ever peaceful. Being myself a devotee of Mahavishnu, I feel no displeasure to him. So I am also Mahavishnu's devotee, and I know who Chitraketu is. Therefore, there is nothing to wonder at in any matter connected with the peaceful and even-sighted devotees of Mahavishnu, for they are all beyond all our calculation. So don't judge a devotee. He's saying, don't think that a devotee is nothing. They are all beyond our calculation. We cannot even understand them. So, saying so, even that this great Lord Shiva is talking so much about a devotee. So think about this. Who a devotee is. A true devotee. A true devotee is just like the Lord himself. So unless and until, of course you have to become a true devotee. So here, Lord Shiva is praising that true devotee. And how Chitraketu was reacting to the curse by Lord Parvati, Goddess Parvati. So we will end this session today with this, and in the next one, they are going to explain how Chitraketu became Vritra. So I'm again absolutely sorry for not having the bhajans today due to various circumstances. So we'll end this program with the Arati, Amma's Arati. जननी वन्दे अमृतानन्द मंगल आरती माता भवानी अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी जन मन निज सुखदायिनी माता अमृतानंदमयी मंगलकारिणी वंदे जननी अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी सकलागम निगमादिषु चरिते अमृतानंदमयी निखिलामयर जननी वंदे अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी प्रेम रसामृत वर्षिणी माता अमृतानंदमयी प्रेम भक्ति संदायिनी माता अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी शमदमदायिनी मनलयकारिणी अमृतानंदमयी सददं मम हृदि वसदा देवी अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी पतितोद्धार निरंतर हृदये अमृतानंदमयी परमहंस पद निलये देवी अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी हे जननी जनि मरण निवारिणी अमृतानंदमयी हे सृदजन परिपालिनी जयदा अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी सुरजन पूजित जय जगदम्बा अमृतानंदमयी समाधिषु धन्ये देवी अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी ओम जय जय जगजननी वंदे अमृतानंदमयी मंगल आरती माता भवानी अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी जय बोलो सद्गुरु माता अमृतानंदमयी देवी की ओम असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ओम शांति शांति शांति। സമസ്താഃ സുഖിനോ ഭവന്തു. ലോകാഃ സമസ്താഃ സുഖിനോ ഭവന്തു. ലോകാഃ സമസ്താഃ സുഖിനോ ഭവന്തു. ഓം ശാന്തി ശാന്തി ശാന്തിഃ. ഓം ശ്രീ ഗുരുഭ്യോ നമഃ. ഹരിഃ ഓം.